Hello, everybody. I hope that people are coming in. Some people are coming in, and I will start the stream right now. So today, as you can see, questions can be accepted only from subscribers, and I will welcome, as always, I welcome your questions. Today, I want to start off with a bit of a talk about the right hand. So, as maybe you know, that I think 2 weeks ago or something like that, I was on a live stream with a tone bass, one of the tone bass founders, Daniel Kurganov, and we had a number of very interesting topics. So our live stream was actually with a name. It had a name, and the name was Dispelling the Myths about violin teaching the violin. So several of the myths were about the right hand, and some of them were about the left hand, specifically vibrato. So today I decided to go with the right hand thing. So I don't anticipate this stream to be very long. It was kind of announced very shortly, I would say, right? Not very long ago. I came up with this time available to me, so it's about an hour that I have today. So anyway, so just things we discussed on the tone base. I don't know if you have seen the stream. If you have not, I think it's for some reason that link is unlisted. It still is in existence on internet, but it's unlisted link. So if you want to watch it, I think I can enclose the link in either description or in one of the comments to one of you after the stream is over. So, but the topics we touched upon there, the first myth of teaching or thinking about the right hand, I believe was about the weight of the arm. And hello, everybody who is joining and saying hi to me. I see your names. Good evening and good day, depending on which time zone we are. So, at least in the United States, it actually was in the United States when I first time heard the expression of the weight of the arm, playing with the weight of the arm. And yes, when I was in Europe, when I was still in Russia, that somehow expression wasn't used at all. And I believe I know why it wasn't used, because most of our teachers taught by more physiological things. And here the expression of weight of the arm is it actually belongs in the realm of imagery. And so that's the main distinction. That's probably why I didn't hear it when I was growing up. But talking back a little bit about just the weight, the word weight. So we should not be confusing two weights. Okay, a lot of times people say use your weight, or use the I guess just use the word weight for almost curing any problem that you might have with the tone production on a violin. So here we have two different weights. So first of all, the word weight, and I believe I already talked about this before, one of my videos, but I'll repeat it here. Weight is the term that is possible only on a certain planet, like planet Earth, where there is gravity. Okay, so what we really have in our body, or for instance the bow, we have the mass of the object, and then we have the weight of the object. So the weight of this object on planet Earth of my bow, is 60.1 grams. Okay, that's how my bow weighs. Now on planet Moon, this bow will be weighing much less. On a planet Jupiter, it will weigh even much more because the gravity on those planets is different from ours. So when we're using the term the weight of the bow, then anybody who is acquainted with physics anyway, right? In any shape, you will, of course, know that if I hold the bow here, so the leverage, I guess the lever is right here. The weight of the bow right now is the greatest because the tug of Earth, or the tug of Earth, I should say. So the gravity is pulling the bow back in every little moment of this length, okay? Now, if I hold the bow this way, then suddenly the weight feels much, much lighter. And of course it is lighter because it only pulls the bow down here in a very small area. So therefore, when we talk about the weight of the bow, and of course, with that comes the bow and the thickness of the bow here, and the thickness of the bow, thinness of the bow rather here. So then when we have this in equation of that, right, as well. So we then have the weight of the bow. So the greatest weight of the bow that there will be on violin will be on D string. It provided your violin is not like this. You're not holding violin at this angle. Okay, so if you hold it up, my shoulders came off, but it might as well be off completely right now. So if the more parallel to earth my violin will be, the more it is definitely D string, but even if it's slightly tilted like that, it still would be D string because it's the most parallel to the earth when the bow is. Okay, so on E, how much weight of the bow will be there on E? Not much at all, as a matter of fact, not much at all. So because we are already at this slant here, right? So yeah, the weight of the bow feels much lighter, and it is much lighter. On A, it's a little bit more. On D, most, and on G again, it's kind of a little bit less than on D, especially as we progress, obviously, out of the thick part to the thin part. So about the thin part, here, the weight of the bow, how much? Not much. So right now, of course, we're on a computer, so you can't hear that it's really light. It's like piano sound. So at this speed, of course, speed comes in, right? Obviously, speed, pressure, and where we are on the violin is the third thing. So if I'm closer to fingerboard here, it will be a little bit more sound, but still within piano realm. And if my bow speed is a little bit higher, it will be really, really pianissimo. That's all. If we don't do anything else, we just play with the weight of the bow. So when you go to the tip and when you want to sustain the sound to the tip, we cannot do it with the weight of the bow. We just empirically proved it. Okay. Yes, thank you, Michelle. The lever arm, correct. So, all right, so then what happens at the frog? Yes, if you're on a D string and on G string and partially on A string, there will be some weight of the bow here because we're still at the angle to the planet, to the right, heavier angle. Now, what about the arm? What about that weight of the arm? The weight of the arm is, as I said earlier, is a pure image. Let me just affix my favorite appendage to my violin. So the weight of the arm, which arm? The whole arm? If I have the weight of the whole arm, and I'm sitting right now, you can see if I go do like this is the weight of my arm. That's the weight of the whole arm, okay? So if I am sitting, therefore I'm more in kind of violin position. So here we are having our arm again. If my arm is on E string, what the weight of the arm is actually right here. It goes to planet Earth, always. It pulls right where the gravity pulls it, okay? So if I'm like that and I would use the weight of my arm literally, it will be like this. That's the weight of my arm. It drops. So of course, that's not what we mean or different teachers mean when they use the word the weight of the arm. What they really want, not image-wise, but to do is to not have any additional unnecessary pressure or tension, rather, not pressure, tension in the shoulder. And by shoulder, I mean very broad shoulder, not shoulder joint exactly, but it's what around the shoulder joint or an upper arm. So in other words, if I'm holding like this and I feel like I'm really holding, I have a lot of tension there, and the weight of the arm, you can see that it just would release. I would think the weight of the arm like, oh, but I don't allow it to droop, of course, which is the true weight of the arm, okay? So then some other teachers say transfer the weight of the arm. So yes, the weight of the arm will go here, but we transfer it to the wrist, you know. So again, it is a great image. I use it myself sometimes, but it's just for you to know that this is an image because we cannot transfer. We haven't yet learned how to transfer gravity from one point to another on this planet. We just don't know. Physically, it doesn't exist. But in our minds, of course, we can. So it's like I will let go here and I will go. So if I had any problem in here, then I'm thinking, okay, I'm transferring this nice heavy feeling into where? I'm transferring it into my hand and specifically to the two fingers that could be involved in tone production. Will be one and two, depending on how your hand is. Transfer of momentum via index finger. Yes, exactly. Momentum or the weight of the arm, all of that is imagery. It's very good imagery. I'm not at all against it, but I'm against when people are confusing the terms. This is like my pet peeve. I don't like unclear situations. So if we agree that I will be using the word weight of the arm and is an image, I'm all for it. And I would invite you to be also all for it. Physically, however, it doesn't exist. As a real thing, it doesn't exist because of gravity and how it pulls us down to earth. So, in other words, and like David says from back of the shoulder, yes, I mean, all these muscles, you can imagine how they're by being solid, they're heavy and relaxed, how you transfer all of that feeling into your index finger or index and sometimes second finger, depending, as I said. Yeah, so I call this, for instance, hanging on the bow. I call this, the word pressure has been kind of not a cool word anymore lately. I think in the United States at least, no more pressure. So pressure is completely euphemized, replaced by the word weight. So weight is good word to use and pressure is bad word to use. No, I think pressure is a very good word to use when the pressure is correct, correctly applied, correctly done. So, and again, not confused what is pressing, which part of your hand should be pressing if pressing, So here, for instance, you don't need to press if you play mezzo forte. No pressure at all whatsoever. But if I go here, yes, I will be applying pressure in a correct way, through all the joints, through all the muscles of my back, my shoulder or my arm and so on, using what's necessary and not more, not getting tense anywhere unnecessarily. And then, yes, using it through the index finger and sometimes second finger, depending on how your hand position is or where in the bow you are. Okay, so, right, so I call this pressure hanging pressure personally. So I like to do this with a student, that kind of hanging feel, like almost not being a violinist at this point, but just, hanging on the bow. Then having it together with the thumb, and I explained it on some of my videos as well. And then when you lean, so it's almost to go like this at first and just hang there. So that's not exactly, it's not pressure. It's like I hang on this index finger. And when I play, I would use that sensation. Again, that sensation. It won't be exactly hanging, of course, because my hand will never be in this exact position, but the feeling is similar. And so a lot of times we use feelings. Of course, we use feelings all the time. We figure out how to sound good, and then we go into how does it feel? How does it, what is it? And then we can describe it to ourselves, especially. It's a very good thing to say, oh, I feel like I'm doing this and that. And then you remember it much better. Those are anchor words, I call them. Oh, Ichel, hello, Ichel. And oh, Merdad is here. Yes. So it is like making the bow tip heavy artificially. Correct. Yes. So we're making it. Now I'm seeing question, how do you achieve that floating sensation during whole bow elbow stick out somewhat? Okay, David, do you mean elbow stick out somewhere? Where elbow sticks out? This is elbow. Does it stick out that way? Or you wanted to go that way? I'm not exactly sure I understand the question. If you could clarify it a little bit. So floating sensation, anyway, maybe he will, all right. So let me look a little bit here. A couple questions. I think I missed the beginning of them. Just a second. Transfer momentum, I saw that one. Heavier artificially, how do you achieve that floating sensation? Does the angle of violin plays a factor of that? Sometimes I see people bend their body backward to make violins almost horizontal. Yeah, well, that's a little bit different question. But yes, sometimes, again, there are a lot of gimmicks floating around, a lot. And sometimes what helps one person will not help other person. That is also important to remember. That's why the person-to-person lessons are actually pretty indispensable on violin, at least. The violin is just too complicated to learn remotely, in a remote way. So yes, basically, if somebody would do this and demonstrate that this is easier to feel, easier to get perhaps the right sound. uh, it is possibly necessary for some people who are maybe playing too much like that, and so they don't experience that gravity pulling down feeling much at all, because none of their strings is uh, truly like at the D level. You see, like my violin is not exactly parallel like that to the floor or on the shoulder. On the shoulder, only people who could play with violin that level, either people who play completely without shoulder rest, and not only that, but they really support the violin with their hand a lot. So you have to have very strong left hand for that. And or you put violin really on the shoulder, which is very far here. So that what that will create, of course, is the reach here. If you don't want to be playing at that angle, when you don't want to play in that angle, or if you don't know how to maintain the same contact point with the wrong angle, so to speak. I have a video about this, so you could watch it. Anyway, if that is not the case, then that's very hard to have the straight bow. Again, we're talking more, we cannot confuse the studies, um, sorry, the stages of one's learning this instrument. Okay, so there are certain things, basics that I would adhere to no matter what, to beginners. Then intermediate, there are certain other things that we include. And when we go to higher level, there are a lot of exceptions actually to those rules that we learned as a beginners. So all of that is true. So let me see again the question. Yeah, so the bend their body backward to me, but maybe if it's necessary for somebody, go ahead and do it. If it doesn't, compromise your back. So that's another story, however. I mean, pressure fingers up on the bow, not bow up on the string, Meyer. Well, the bow on the string is also will be pressing, of course. Yeah, we apply pressure onto the stick in order for the stick to distribute pressure to the hair, and hair is in contact with the string, and it pulls the string then in a certain way, a little differently than uh, when we don't apply any pressure depending on the part of the bow. Yeah. So the bow plane angle. Okay, so flat wrist in line with elbow, no drooping elbow. Yes, David, it's flat wrist in line with the elbow, but it is really only in the middle that we do it. Only in the middle. So when we're in the middle of the bow, like it could be large middle, again, depends on your proportions. Okay, like a length of your arm, where exactly you hold violin, the angle of the scroll in relation uh, to your chin, so if the scroll is here, and I am that way, you can see just basically, we can go here. I can easily rely on Galamin. It's a square, basically, what he called a square. So this line is basically parallel to this line. This line is basically parallel to violin. So for me to have that parallelness, as you can see, I will be right up above the middle. If I am here slightly, I'm already slightly not parallel in my forearm to the violin, but that's okay. So I still, yes, I would still aim for flat wrist in here because this is the most comfortable position for us to work, to play fast and loud, actually, or lighter, and then maybe to come off string because the bow actually jumps in there, bounces, right? So it will be only here, but at the frog, very few people can, well, not maybe very, a few people can do it. Those who are trained sort of, I would say, what Galamian method, I guess, and it's comfortable for them. Most of the world doesn't play like that. Very good example of playing like this at all times is Pinka Zuckerman. But he, for instance, and Itzhak Perlman studied with the same teachers, and meanwhile, Itzhak Perlman will still have that kind of wrist at the frog, and Pinka Zuckerman has it very flat. So works for him, has great sound, very good. You look at some other phenomenal players as well, and many of them, most of them actually will have some elevation of the wrist at the frog, not flatness like that. So middle is definitely at the tip. The wrist dips somewhat. We don't want to dip too much like this, of course, but it dips somewhat because again, extension of the full arm. Okay, so let me see what else is coming in. So pressure fingers, flat wrist and line. Okay, I just said that. Galan is correct. Robert says to explain them the bow hold, especially the finger positions. Can you help me with a tip for them for little kids? Well, I think one of the things with little kids is very important. Maybe I would not be answering exactly your question, but the main thing with little kids is not to go technical. Like put your finger there because this finger will do that. They just get bored and distracted, and their mind is gone. So it's more like playing games, right? Of course, I'm sure you're doing it. That if you're teaching them. Um, but I will go more with the kids. I will go more by sensation rather than explanation. Saying, okay, do you feel like this? I would still start with, actually, I would, hanging in the bow will be first, and then there will be stuff on thicker pencils, and then back to the bow again. And so basically explaining that holding the bow, holding your hand like that with the wrist straight, and then bending your thumb, and just bend your thumb and let it go against the second finger, and then unbend it again and just let it droop. And you kind of feel them all. So you have to feel them, their hands, and kind of guide them into this position, and then say, and now you will be just being like that, and then now get your thumb in here, and not to get exactly into like what you should do in words too much, but more by feel. This is, I think, is a more uh, faster way to get to them, and they will memorize because they're much better than us in memorizing the little sensations. But as a teacher of little kids, that they tend to, of course, grip, and that's understandable. That's our very strong reflex of gripping, so it's kind of hard. So tips, I would say, in inventing more games, more parallels. Will hold it like you hold this, or do this like you will do this, so they can, okay. So, and hopefully, and also not to be dis discouraged, I guess, or upset that some of them would still play with really poor bow hands at first. And then again, I would constantly mold them and constantly uh, correct the little things. For instance, example of me, when I, let me see, also premium bow skittering. Um, so finishing the different little kids playing with different bow hands, they're like, for instance, when I first started, I remember my mother taking me to her teacher, who was phenomenal with like all technique, right? Unfortunately, he was dying at that point. Literally, he had I think it was MS or something, that he was on the last stages of the disease. So I only had few lessons with him, but he managed. I don't remember it, of course. I was 5.5 or 6 years old. So I have pictures of me at that age. My bow hand looks picture perfect, like picture perfect. And I was playing with that hand apparently for, week, 2, 3, whatever month. But then he was gone, and I was with the other teacher, and somehow the natural tendency got me to play with it all went away. And so my very good bow hand did not stick. And so for a while, I remember corrections to apparently I was doing this, or apparently in some other corrections in my mind, I was doing even this. It all was, ages before, like I was 11, probably. Yeah, 11, 12, before that. So I went through from that very nice hand. I still, without proper attention and proper corrections all the time, I went to something else. Then I went to the teacher who already explained to me. I was in a conscious age, as I call it, when you can think and understand and so on, and so then I got it corrected. Now, my brother, who was a brilliant violinist in his younger years, uh, he started with the same good teacher, my second good teacher. Okay, he started and he had very high elbow, and he stayed with that high elbow for the whole life. But when he started, his bow hand looked like this, and he played like this for, I don't know, at least 4 years. Just wasn't, and then later, little by little, by himself and with the help, his hand started looking like that. So he was able to play very flat wrist, by the way, at the frog because his elbow was much higher. So it's all very different, and we should not be discouraged when kids just do make mistakes, as long as they sound good and as long as they have a good idea how they should sound, and the bowings basically work, whichever bowings that they're doing, it's fine. Okay. Ashton, hello. Let me see. I need to check the question all the way at the top. Oh, okay. I'm going to the top, as I'm told. Okay, let's see. You know what? I cannot see what I missed. Tone base with Daniel talks about right hand, left hand balancing between thumb, pinky. Talk about motions to prevent scratch when playing pianos near frog. Okay, maybe that's what I missed. And Sar, I will definitely get to your question right after. So yes, to prevent scratching when playing pianissimo, first of all, if you can avoid playing pianissimo at the frog, avoid it, because it's just a lot of hassle, honestly. But sometimes it's true, it's unavoidable. We have some long notes too, and we just have to stay in piano. So yeah, so then you're lifting the weight of the bow with hopefully your pinky. That's what happens. Yes. So that's what really truly in this position, which is, you can call it Galamian, close to Galamian. It's really slightly adjusted Franco-Belgian, I would call it position. The flat wrist. If the wrist is a little bit higher, you're basically in Franco-Belgian setup. So, but doesn't matter what it's called. I mean, that's what really truly best lift the bow. Why this and not, for instance, this? Well, you can probably see how much more tension I have right now to hold it primarily with the third finger, or I can hold it with two fingers, and still you see a lot of tension. And that way, you don't see as much tension because I can release all these fingers. It's just the way, again, I didn't invent it. That's the way the human hand works. So we have to lift the bow. So if I play with forte, I would lift the bow, my bow. I know where I have to lift my bow because of how it's built. So you need to find out how your bow works, and then start applying slight pressure with that pinky as you go to the frog, and you control it by sound, of course. And then very good exercise is to go right near the string like this, or touch with one hair, as we call it. Okay, so that's the exercise. You will feel like, oh my, on D string, I'm showing on the hardest string, of course, here, but it will be much easier. On A, you still will hold. On E, it's not too much holding that weight of the bow, but it's just being really playing with one hair. You know what? I think playing with one hair is a great exercise. Also, will give you a very good idea how to do this. This is pretty much what it is. Okay, so let me see. I need to go here. All right, and well, thank you, Basim. Okay, thank you very much. Let me see. I very much thank you for your donation. I really appreciate it because yes, I am doing it for without charging normally, but I do appreciate it because yes, it takes my time and preparation and other things. Thank you very much for your donation. I appreciate it. Um, so coming back to questions, hovering over the strings, using the whole bow. Yes, hovering over the string. Yes, that's exactly what actually Leopold Auer suggestion. That was one of his exercises, to be able to play actually whatever you're playing, as long as it's not bouncing strokes, of course, on string strokes. It also trains very well the straight bow. If one needs it, if one's bow slides all the time, it's very good to do it, because the straight bow, you see, like here, basically, I don't have violin, I don't have bow, but I know how it feels. So this is what it looks like when you play with straight bow, and that's a very good exercise to do with the whole bow when you're in keeping it as near the string, on the level of that string and without touching it. So that's the ultimate control. Yeah. So oh, Marco, thank you so much. I could learn vibrato. Oh, I'm so glad. Well, you know what, Marco is saying, he could learn vibrato watching my apparently vibrato videos. Never found better explanation. I will not take a full credit of my explanation of it, because that's how we were taught. That's the principle of how it was taught in what used to be Soviet Union, in my case, Moscow. And I did just make it a little bit clearer, like when you switch from one movement to another movement and how to do it. But basically, yeah, everybody was taught the same way and everybody achieved very good results. Um, Okay, let me see. Any tips you can give for other teachers to help them grow more and more in teaching? Sometimes something can constantly be worked. You know what? Yes, I constantly do it actually. Um, my former students, especially long time former students, often tell me that, oh my God, this is you teaching it very differently now. Something's even better and so on. Well, of course, it's because I am curious all the time how to, and I learn. I mean, if you don't learn somewhere, you cannot, there's no God, on violin. None, not a single person, no matter how famous they are, how many concerts they play, what they accomplish. There's nobody who knows it all in one, just that person knows it all. It's not possible. And so we constantly learn another method of approaching something. And yeah, I read, I watch, new students come to me and I see how they do things and I ask them. And sometimes they tell me what they did have done with their previous teacher, if it's a good result. I would ask them, for instance, about bowhand. I have one girl right now in my studio who I was absolutely sure that she played with that bowhand for a long time because it's very natural looking. She's good sound, very solid, nice. And I said, well, apparently you play like this for years. She said, oh no, I actually just changed it when I was studying with my previous teacher. And her previous teacher is a wonderful teacher, Grigory Kalinovsky in Indiana. And so, yes, with him under his tutelage, and mainly what he did with her was getting her to listen to the sound. And with that, she readjusted her hand position from what it used to be before, which I don't know, to what it is now. So yes, I immediately asked her like little tips what he did, and so on. Even though, yeah, we're very similar, Grigory and I. We taught together. We know basically the same things. There are a little bit differences on how he would explain something, how I would explain something. But then I'm curious, like, okay, can I use this explanation with that student, right? Rather than using only mine. So, but that's how I think growth happens. Growth. So I would encourage other teachers not to be afraid. For instance, I have some teachers that approached me for online lessons, and I give online lessons to some teachers in different countries. Sometimes in this country, actually in the United States, I had some professional people, fully professional, who play in orchestras or are chamber musicians, and they asked me for some lessons, and we basically could be exchanging ideas. So, not to be afraid to reach out, and also do spend time to just investigate what else is out there. And don't think that if you are reached the age of 50, then that's it. You cannot learn. Of course you can learn. Any age can learn. I have one student who is 75. Well, she's a teacher. She's not exactly my student, but She thinks that she's my student. Is a teacher, is a very effective teacher, but she wants still to learn how to do this better or that one or that repertoire and so forth. And so, yeah. Um, Again, David returns to the bow and the down bow. Does thumb fully extend near the tip? It depends on the length of the thumb a lot. Yes, it basically does extend. If your thumb is very long, my thumb is very long. So sometimes my thumb can stay in that position even when I'm at the tip because it's very long thumb. So if my thumb is shorter, of course it will extend, here, basically. This is the hand, or it could be that hand, depending on the arm length and the um, um, and other fingers and and the thumb especially. Oh, Marco, you're giving me compliments all the time. Thank you. I'm glad that my streams are helpful. Okay, so Tereska, let me see your question. Thank you for sharing in. Please describe how the instrument should be ideally set on the body. What are the common mistakes in adjusting your shoulders? Not sure if I would have time really for this. Tereska, I will. Which country are you from? Are you from Europe? Your name is from Europe, but I'm not sure where you're located. Let me pause this question for a second and see. My left hand has easily, let me see, um, tires easily. That's Ecoms, Le Grand Malade. Okay, tires easier when I play pieces in G minor, or those with a lot of B in okay, nature is F, fine. So F natural on E is fine, but the lower finger on B flat and on A is not? Huh. I wonder if it has to do a little bit maybe with your elbow. Yeah. Well, I probably think that it is, yeah, so something here is freer and here is maybe other thing. You need to look for that, if that is happening on A string, perhaps. If this muscle here jams, that's number one I would look for. So get yourself into higher position and be able to move your thumb like this. Sorry, not thumb, the first finger. So like I am basically in a very high position right now, high first, and just move thumb. So I see I will keep them like underneath violin almost, but very light. It's very light, just sliding. So, and then you slightly press. So you should be really away in here, not having any of that. So perhaps, I mean, honestly, I would really need to see your hand. Exactly, that's what it is to really help you. But that's my thought. Ashton is asking, I think you may have missed my questions if you comments up. Sorry. But we got another look at it. Okay, Ashton. So where was Ashton before? Ashton, to clarify. Okay, so you can see. So, I see, the vibrato question. All right. So when I try to transfer the vibrato to first position, my wrist compensates by bending and protruding outwards. Is that so? Like, is that what it does in first position? Do you have any tips on straightening my wrist when doing wrist vibrato? So in other words, I see. So if because you're here, okay, it might be that way. So your body probably remembers that in this position when you do this, right? It's that angle. So when you go down, the body wants to keep that angle most likely. I can tell you one thing. If that's the case, to clarify, in the lower position, my wrist is bent outward, sharp. Rounding out to knocking against the door. Yeah, so that way, of course, it will push up. It's true. So okay, but the sound, probably that is happening, right? Ashton, I would tell you one thing. There's this funky thing in our minds, in our brains, minds, that in the body connection that sometimes we just remember certain things and we don't know that we remember the whole thing. Okay, we are conscious that, oh yes, I'm in this position, therefore of course my wrist will be like that. That's exactly what we want in this position, right? Then you transfer it here and it cannot do it in that way, right? So this is what you're finding, that it wants to go back to the way I would deal with this. I will rephrase, sort of restructure the command in my mind, saying that, okay, so without the violin, if I can do it this way, here, I'm here, for some reason, I can do it both ways, right? Because you have a little support on the thumb. So maybe what you need to, okay, so rephrasing here, right? So if I can do this movement here, then possibly I can do this movement there without the violin. So if you can, it's going to be probably slower movement. That's fine because you don't have anything supporting you. But this is what you do in first position then. That will be your ideally first position. So understanding that sometimes it's a trick of our brain that just got the whole picture and doesn't want to let go of this picture, okay? Which actually the other one exists right there. So it's more of a brain mapping kind of thing rather than physical thing. You see what I mean? So can you do a nice vibrato this way? Actually, yes. If then, even in this position, I won't advocate to keep it forever, but even in this position, let me show you. Right now, I'm making it to go backward more, even though I'm like this. So this in going upward is not necessarily connected fully to the fact that it's bent like that. You see what I mean? So for you, it goes up, but I can actually see, basically I'm getting flatter. You can see, I'm elongating my finger backward and I will be vibrating more backwards. It's also possible. So obviously not ideal situation, but what you could do is to get your violin on the thumb here, like this, and then try. So the thumb, for now, will become your point of contact. Here's the contact is with this part of the thumb. Here, you can just hang violin on the thumb. Okay, just like this. Don't worry, it's right or wrong. By the way, for vibrato, there is not right or wrong. You can vibrate anyway if it sounds good. Be my guest. So if you hang a violin like this, I can do it without shoulder rest, by the way, as well. So then you keep it there, and then you create exactly that vibrato feel from the wrist as you do in upper positions. And I think that would be the physical way to do it. And the other one, you can also do rephrase the mapping. Okay, so it should take care of it, I believe. Okay, so let me see my other questions here. A lot of questions. Okay, so Ashton here. For B flat, I usually extend my first finger backward and my wrist collapses a little. Should I do sort of shift to half position instead? Well, in other words, is that what's happening? Yeah, you could, of course, you could go a little bit lower here, but I wouldn't suggest to go too low because, I mean, in terms of thumb, I wouldn't suggest to go all the way to the nut. That's not going to help situation because that will possibly put strain on your uh, pinky and also possibly create this clench. So you really need to be able to, yeah, adjust, modify a little bit where you are. Perhaps maybe you're too much forward, or something else. You know what? The best way, actually, that I found for myself when I was correcting a lot of my own mistakes when I was younger, because as I said earlier, I had this few lessons with a wonderful teacher, but unfortunately he died. And then I was kind of on my own because my next teacher wasn't really, I don't know, maybe we didn't find the connection language, with her. But anyway, all my technique went bad pretty much in my young years. So later on, I had to correct a lot of my technique, which I believe, of course, made me a much better teacher because I remember how to get out of this, out of that. So the very good way to get out of whatever situation, like you have it basically at your disposal, you know that an E string, it is okay, it works fine. Go into your hand, into sensation, into every little question. Find inside, like, where my elbow? How do I feel? Where's my hand? Where's my finger? And then move it. It's an example, your own example on your own violin. And then move exactly that situation so that you can have the same feel right in here. So for that, you most likely will move your elbow, of course. An angle will change slightly, but that feeling here, so you're looking for the feeling right around the first finger. Yeah, you have an example of your own body. That's the best way to model from yourself to yourself, I call it. So that would be the cleanest way to go there. And then experiment. Yeah, experiment for everything. Now, for starters, okay, now poems left Mullers asking for starters, intermediate, and more advanced teachers. What would you recommend on doing, reading, watching to branch out, to learn more and more on for each level? I really think that every level would be the same. It's every level. I went to observe a lot of lessons of different teachers when I was a younger teacher. And even right now, I would gladly go and observe anywhere, but whenever I can, I do. For instance, if somebody comes with a masterclass or masterclass is nearby and I can get there, I will go watch. I will go watch myself. And when I was younger teacher, I was starting, and I always taught, really, I never really taught little kids myself, just because the way my brain works, I'm very serious, and I like to appeal to what I call conscious minds. So I could invent games, but it will take so much more of my energy. So there are specialists who teach little kids. And I know one of them. She's my very good friend and she lives in Finland. She's a phenomenal teacher for little kids. So if, I can ask her if you maybe can be connected to her and ask her this question. But what she did, I know that at one point she got a Fulbright to come to United States, and she went to a lot of good Suzuki schools, even though she doesn't teach Suzuki. And she went to many different observing and many different teachers who taught little kids. She went to Midori, and with Midori, she traveled all the way to Japan and learned things in there. So yeah, that's the example of a teacher for young children who wants to grow. Of course, he teaches from beginning through 18 and older. If they stay with her, of course, she can teach older people as well. So a good teacher can basically teach any level. So to improve, the book I really like is The Violin Lesson by Simon Fisher. Probably The Violin Lesson for teachers, especially because there are a lot of explanations, and he gives also the sources. Like some people teach it this way, some people that way, so which is also good. So I would say definitely that, and just basically looking for different uh, material that has been published on topic, Googling the topic or going to JSTOR if you remember, and getting things in there. Yeah, what I would say that way, and sitting in the lessons. So yes, and as I said, I was a young teacher. I sat in a lot of lessons. In summers, I would go, like I would say, okay, so this month I would go to this festival and sit, because there are usually a lot of teachers in festivals, right? And yeah, I sit in one lesson and then ask another teacher, may I sit in your lesson, and observe and pick up, especially for me, it was language, because I needed to teach in English now, not in Russian. Okay, yes, Tereska, Poland, that's what I thought. Okay, my teacher has me learning double stops, stop technique from Shevchik. Can one work on speed with a metronome? For example, exercise on and one, moving up. Or is the focus purely intonation now? I would say that at first, it with shifting, no, double stop, you said double stop technique, yes. Main thing is, first of all, because there are a lot of shifting involved in double stops also, that the shifts are light, that your fingers, don't press with fingers as you move. So I would first go for intonation. Yeah, you also need to have like feel for moving faster. So every exercise, I would speed it up, even at the loss of intonation, but with more, um, with definitely less pressure. Because when we go for intonation, we tend to press the fingers unconsciously. We're doing that. We tend to press them more and more and more because we usually hold it longer and repeat. And it kind of gets there for many people. Maybe not for all, but for many. So what I recommend, doing double stop, first get good intonation on whichever 4 notes you're doing, 5 notes, and then repeat the same thing, keeping the places of the fingers, keeping intonation lighter, just like say, oh, I'll let go of something, and you do that. And then you start going a little bit faster. You can also use visualization technique and imagine how you will be moving faster, really imagine how everything will feel, and then repeat it usually brings better results. So yes, intonation and lightness first, then speed. applied, and you can go without much intonation back on and so on, and repeat the process, and it will go better. Now, meaning to learn that systematically for the first time. Yeah, it's good. You can do it on Shevchik. You can also do it on, maybe you're above this level, but Josephine Trott has wonderful book of learning double stops there. It's a little bit more kind of starting from more basic and more melodious, So you have, besides just like Shevchik is pretty dry, which is wonderful. If you like this kind of exercise, fantastic. But, sometimes you can do a little bit of an etude, for you can go to Kreutzer and do octave etude in Kreutzer for octaves, and not just only playing octaves, but playing octaves in the scale, like would be in Schradik. Yeah, it's harder, of course. How can I quickly memorize a song? By ear. Just hear how it sounds. Repeat. Pay attention to intervals. You have to, if you know intervals, I would say it helps. Like, okay, this is first, a third I go, or a fourth, and then just by ear. That's how you can quickly memorize a song, if it's a song. Professor Kolonowski claims that when playing in the tip, most of the pressure comes from below with the thumb and very little from above with the index. No, I don't agree with that. That's not how I play. Yeah, I mean, as I said, Professor Kolonowski is a wonderful teacher. So, but sometimes I don't feel that it comes from my thumb, honestly. If anything, I feel like it comes from above, because the reality is we cannot press with the thumb up, like the physiological reality. You can only just keep it there. This one, but in fact, they can only press against each other. Now, again, maybe what Professor Kalinowski means that in cases of a lot of people press with the index finger indiscriminately and not using that, what I call hanging pressure. Another image, right, that I talked about earlier today. So not the hanging pressure, but like this kind of pressure. So if I use this kind of pressure, yes, right now I'm pressing more with my first finger, index finger, and less with the thumb, and it will produce a better result. But what am I exactly doing? I am tensing the whole finger. Well, of course, if I know what I'm doing, but the person who plays might not realize that that's what they're doing. Okay, so that's another thing. So, Ron, thank you so much for your donation. I really appreciate it. So, index finger pressure. So there is good pressure and there's bad pressure, like everything else in this life. We can overdo the good thing and it becomes a bad thing, or we can want to do the good thing, but we're very close, but not there. And that's the case with the pressure on the bow. And that's what I think why the word pressure got such bad reputation, because a lot of times when people, they think they press correctly, which is then through the stick into the hair. But in fact, what they do, I'm sorry, Robert. I just hear it's okay. Robert, thank you very much for the donation. So what I do here is pressing like this. I'm pressing into the stick right here. So in other words, I'm squeezing this. Do you see that feel? Well, feel you can't see, but this. So that pressure is wrong. It's just bad type of pressure. And if I press that way, then of course my thumb is maybe pressing less than the first finger, because first finger just like is clenched, and the sound then will be. I can get to that sound, which is awful. Of course, my speed was also low. I can play with bigger speed and it will sound a little bit better, but it will be pressed tone, truly. So what we want, not that pressure into the stick right here, but leaning into the stick correctly. And then it may feel to you that your thumb actually is a counter pressure. Thumb provides counter pressure. Okay? Pressure comes from physiologically. Pressure comes from above. Counter pressure is the thumb. So how it feels to you can be different from person to person, and so I believe, I'm absolutely sure that this is what Professor Komlowski refers to. Okay. Yes, my thumb jams a lot with B flat. Okay, I'm glad. Basim. I'm about to finish Wolfhard Opus, and I'm thinking the next book should I start with, other than Kreutzer, because I'm working on it in parallel. So, what book you recommend after Wolfhard? Oh, Mazas, definitely. I mean, I'm not actually, you know what? I am not sure what is at the end of Wolfhard, because in my schooling, excuse me, so in my schooling when I was little, and again, I don't really teach that level very often. We would not go all necessarily through all Wolfhard, but from some Wolfhard. You don't need to do the whole book, by the way, of any book, unless, of course, you want to. But because exercises, etudes will be redundant in many other books by other professors, great violinists. Things will be repeated, and you just kind of choose the one that you want to, that appeals to you a bit more, better. So, for instance, yeah, mazas are great etudes. Some of the beginning mazas, of course, you don't need to do, because I'm sure you did some more advanced Wolfards already. So go in mazas and see. But you know what? And okay, finishing my phrase. Go later in mazas and see which ones you can segue in. Okay. So, but on the other hand, I can tell you this: some mazas can be done on such a high level. Like I was sitting one time, speaking of which, I was visiting Berlin several years ago before COVID. I was visiting there. I went to Hochschule in Berlin, and I sat in several lessons, of course. Yeah, what do? I mean, I'm sitting in lessons, observing what people do, what other teachers do, especially teachers over the ocean. So, and this was one, he was a German teacher, and he had a really advanced Russian girl playing. And one of the first things in the lesson that they were doing Mazas etude. And one of the first ones too, like close at the beginning of I mean, she's the person who plays Paganini caprices too. She plays very advanced repertoire, and meanwhile he was using some mazas to hone and polish a certain stroke. In that case, it was like martelet related stroke. So you can actually do a lot of stuff on the beginning of mazas. I really love mazas. They're very melodious etudes. I just really love them. And then, of course, don't Opus 37. Some of them, absolutely. The beginning of that, it will be kind of corresponding. Oh, Kaiser. If you haven't done any Kaiser, look in Kaiser. And I just suggest for that, don't use the whole book. Don't need the whole book. Therefore, you can take examples from Imasoki, unless, of course, you want to. Knocking on door. Well, let me see. I think I'm missing some things. Robert, yes, Robert, thank you so much again. Okay, Mohammed, hi, do you have any practice to strengthen the pinky? Yes, I do, and I would refer to you right now, for the sake of the time, I would refer to you to my video with Andras Terzik. It's interviews that I was taping with this wonderful hand specialist, and she actually gives exercises for pinkies that are away from the instrument, and they're really necessary to do in order to strengthen them better on the instrument. And yes, and also have some videos on that. Pinky push-ups, correct. Professor, do you have any advices for ricochet, starting a new technique, in the belly? Yeah, ricochet, don't grab the bow hard, and take it here and just let it drop on the string with some, at flat hair. So the hand is here, and just let it, and nothing in here. So when you drop, you can even lift the fingers if you like, and just make sure that the hair is flat. Okay, don't move the bow fast at all. Very slow movement. You advance like 1 inch if you are in inches, or 2.5 centimeters the most, kind of like that. Not low, not a fast movement, and that's the beginning of. Um, Leaning is pronation, David is asking. Well, I mean, it's another thing about leaning. Pronation, really, in physiological terms, this hand, this position of human hand, this one, is called neutral. This is pronated. This is supinated. Okay, so we violins are constantly at pronation. We are already like we hold the bow. If we hold the bow, that's already pronated hand, pronated forearm. So when we are called leaning, it's actually called rotating the forearm rotation. It's not really pronation anymore, because it's already pronated, and then you want over pronate can call it possibly. But yeah, so I wouldn't call it pronation. I would call it rotate. Physically, it's rotation of the forearm. Yeah. Tips on left hand pizzicato for finger in the tzigane. There's a section of finger and high register can get a grip on the strings. It's so close to fingerboard. That's correct. That is it is hard. So in fact, and my violin right now has very low strings, so my pizzicato is extremely hard to do because of that. Exactly, even in first position. So, but the only thing to do it is really, trying to lift it up as much as you can. Now, the strength of pizzicatos, some hands are much better at left hand pizz because they're stronger. You have to have very strong muscles over the fingers here and not too wobbly joints. A lot of practice, but again, if your pizzicatos in other positions are good, so then you will be able to get it by trying to pull it up more, because pulling it to the side might not get you enough things. And honestly, it's just so a lot of that is inbuilt in your hand. I'm sorry to say, but genetically. So some people are just faster to get left-hand pits and some slower, and some will never have a very good left-hand pits because of the hand structure, and some will have fantastic left-hand pits. So, but it will help for sure. Too nervous when auditioning and performing in front of people. I forget the score, and I can't concentrate on the performance. What should I do? You really need to kind of read some books on that. There is also a book, one of the books to read. I refer a lot of people to The Inner Game of Music. It's kind of an old book, but it is still a very good one. I'm sure there are really good books since then. That was by oh yeah, I forgot the last name. But you just Google The Inner Game of Music book, and it addresses the issues of nervousness on stage. There's also Noah Kageyama, I believe is his name. It's online course on reducing. You have to subscribe to it. It costs money, but he's a Juilliard graduate, very good violinist who actually is specifically designed the whole course on getting rid of stage fright. So if you need more information, if you forget whatever, you can write me either through my website or at this email to channel email, violinclassusa@gmail.com, and I'll send you the names. Michelle, thank you. I also see folks joke that's actually a death to violinists. No, I mean, if you like exercises, oh, fantastic. Oh, that's so wonderful. Video on Ricochet. Thank you very much that Arsenty, the moderator, put here the video on Ricochet and browse through. Yes, absolutely. Some of the questions I'm quickly repeating. I assume because you're all subscribers, you saw the other videos, but by now there are quite a few of them. I do address a lot of issues there. There's a as a matter of fact, there is a left-hand pizzicato video with my niece, and it's exactly on the Ravel Tzigane, actually. She was using it there. But again, of course, I explained the main things, like the main principle there, and then she also shows us. You're very welcome, David. Do you have any advice for a left thumb that can't stay against the neck? Neck slips down thumb. Yes. I thought my left hand was too low, and it seems to fix the issue by lifting it higher, but I am unsure. Again, you could, if you look at the exact problem, he holds his thumb is always here. He has a long thumb up here, obviously. It depends on how much you have this joint helping or not helping. So, for instance, mine easily collapses. So for me, if I go here, it will slide all the way into my hand. So I rarely use it. I sometimes use it like this, but you can see how my joint collapses. It's just because I have very lax joints. So left hand thumb. Next, you address this by actually I'm lower. My thumb is very long. My fingers are long, so I'm lower. I'm holding the thumb right here. So I just don't allow it to slip, honestly. Which books for practicing skill do you recommend? Goliath Flash or, I use Elizabeth Gillel's book. It's not in print anymore, however, but if you write to me, I can just PDF it to you. Yeah. for rotation. Could you tell me how to match the pitch of the scale? I have a video on the pitch on how to practice and tune. Please find it, because there I'm pretty detailed. Anxiety, a cognitive approach. Okay, The Inner Game of Music by Barry Green. Thank you, Arsenji, so much. Yes, and Peter Baxter, thank you so much. Yeah, so by Barry Green and Timothy Galway. So it's based on the first book by Timothy Galway, which called The Inner Game of Tennis, because the way we process things in tennis, or actually in a lot of sports, and on violin is pretty much the same. It's very similar. Um, Double stops, 13 tones, great. Okay, so we came to the end of the stream. I have to go. I thank you very much. I thank you all. The next stream, I believe we are planning to do next Saturday at 7 o'clock my time. So that's basically kind of for different time zones. So I believe it will be very early and undoable for Poland, but unless of course Polish people are on this side of the ocean. Anyway, I believe it's next Saturday at 7, but 7 Central Time. But check any posting here on that, and hopefully I will see you and as well as other people later. And again, I very much thank you for those who have donated today. I really appreciate the donations. All right. Bye, everybody.